3 o'clock on a Saturday night / Sunday morning. That must mean it's wrestling time here on FAN. Jody Mack with you. Rich Mancuso will join us, as will Dave Meltzer of the Wrestling Observer newsletter. We'll get Dave's thoughts on the WCW and the WWF. One coming off a big pay-per-view show, one heading toward one. Lots of doings, lots of shakings in both of the two major federations.
George, why are you looking through the Joneses' garbage?
8 after 3 here on FAN. Jody Mack in our wrestling hour with Rich Mancuso. Hello, Rich.
Hi, Jody.
How are you?
Good, you?
And on the telephone line with us as well as Dave Meltzer of the Wrestling Observer newsletter. Hi, Dave.
How you doing, Jody?
I'm good. And yourself?
Real good, real good.
Good. Dave, well, let's kick it off talking WCW first here tonight. They're coming off their Halloween Havoc card. What do you think of the card overall?
Overall, I thought it was better than it looked on paper, but I would just say it was a so-so show.
Were you surprised when Paulie Dangerously came out? A lot had been made of his situation with the WWF. Some people are now speculating that it might have been a hoax all along, that there never was a problem, and they did this just to build interest in the Halloween Havoc show.
No. I mean, they had, he was suspended, and there were letters going back and forth and everything, but what happened was that, the reason he was suspended was somebody, Jerry Jarrett or Jerry Lawler or something said something, and they realized that, he was accused of something that he didn't do, and it was pretty obvious he didn't do it. So I think that those in WCW realized that there was no reason to suspend him and brought him back. Plus, I think they wanted a new manager all along anyway.
But David, we had a press conference in New York last Friday, and Paulie stated that he was given WCW 72 hours to make a decision. So apparently they must have made the deal the Saturday night prior to it or early Sunday morning of last week. But most people I spoke to this week were stunned to see him at Halloween Havoc.
Well, the negotiations to bring him back started before the press conference. I know that they start like the Wednesday before the pay-per-view, but the deal actually wasn't finalized. He flew down to Chattanooga, I believe, on Saturday, but I think that they were arguing over, exactly what he would do and everything. I don't think the deal was finalized until Sunday afternoon. So, it was one of those things. I mean, once he was down in Chattanooga, obviously he was going to do something, but I think that they're not exactly sure exactly what he's going to do, but I think he's going to be pushed as the top manager in the promotion. I think that's pretty clear.
He's going to take over the reins for Rick Rude along with Medusa Michelli. Do you think that's what Paulie wanted to do, that he wanted to stick with the managing and stay out of the broadcast position?
No, Paulie wanted to be a broadcaster, but the company wanted him to be a manager, and as it all worked out, the chance to manage Rick Rude, I think, was enough for him to come back. He's going to be managing other people, too. I think that they're going to add, probably at least 2 or 3 other names to that list between now and the end of the year.
And Dave, there are rumors that the Honky Tonk Man has been negotiating with WCW. Can you confirm that, or what is the status of him coming in?
I don't know. I haven't heard that at all, so I really, can't confirm it or anything.
Do you think Paulie will do a better job as a manager? As you mentioned, he would have rather stuck with the broadcasting end of it. I think he did a nice job at the broadcast mic. Do you think he's better suited to be a manager or a broadcaster?
Well, I think for that company, he's more valuable, that company, as a manager. They really didn't have a strong manager, and he had the potential to be, with Bobby Heenan kind of stepping aside and Jim Cornette doing other things. He really has the potential to be the best manager as far as like interviews and all that in the whole business. So I think that for what WCW needed, it was better. That's the better role for him.
Was there ever a time in this brief suspension where the WCW felt that, hey, we got to get him back, or he's going to WWF?
I don't know. I don't know if they ever thought about that, but I think that at some point, if they didn't bring him back, I think that Vince McMahon knows what he's doing, and I think that he would have wound up there, yeah.
Which matches did or didn't you like on the Halloween Havoc card?
Well, I think Bobby Eaton and Terry Taylor was probably the best match on the show. Like Lex Luger and Ron Simmons and Dustin Rhodes and Steve Austin was a real impressive match. And Jimmy Garvin and Johnny B. Badd really surprised me. I didn't expect that to be nearly as good as it was. On the bad side, I just didn't care for the Chamber of Horrors and some of the other matches, which on paper looked like they would be bad. You know, they were short, but they were, you know, they didn't really have a chance.
Hey, Dave, I got to agree with you. That Chamber of Horrors match, I think, was a real horror in itself. In particular, that referee camera that they used, they have to take a lot of the mistakes out of that. They're going to use that again, because I thought that was disgusting, especially they used that camera in the main event in the Simmons-Luger match, and you couldn't even see the pin at the end.
I think that that was a nice idea, but I hope they never do it again, because you know the referee was turning his head so much, and it was like it was horrible. You couldn't see anything when they had that referee camera in there. It just made you mad that they were going to that shot.
Dave, what was the buy rate on the card? Have the numbers come out yet? Because I think they made a royal mistake in scheduling it on a Sunday night against the Eagles versus the Giants versus the Redskins. Fine, you don't know that the 7th game of the World Series is going to be played that night, but it was a possibility. For them to schedule it on that day, I think they did themselves a major injustice.
Well, I don't know what the buy rate is. I've heard two different versions, and there's big discrepancy. The WCW people are claiming it was a 1.2 buy rate, which if I was them, I would be thrilled to death. Other sources in the cable industry are telling me it's an 0.7, which is an outright disaster. And given what they were going up against, that 0.7 really didn't shock me that much, because you know, the 7th game of the World Series, you know, the thing that it drew like a 32 rating on television. You know, you had, you know, most of the country watching the football game and the baseball game, and it's just, you know, you were really left with your real hardcore wrestling fans, and that's just not enough.
What came out of Halloween Havoc, Dave? I kind of think that you're really not left with anything except for the Rick Rude Sting confrontation down the line. But as far as Ron Simmons and Lex Luger, what were your impressions as far as down the line, what came out of this one?
Well, nothing came out of it as far as those two. Ron Simmons has a bad wrist, so he's going to be out for a long time, and Barry Windham is going to be out for a while. There was actually a lot of injuries. You know, actually, most of them took place before Havoc, you know, and as far as Luger, he's going to be working now, wrestling with Rick Steiner, I think, at the next Clash. So that'll be his next big opponent, and that, you know, they didn't really do anything on that show to set that match up, but that's the direction they're going in.
Dave, is it me, or are we seeing more injuries than ever before in wrestling? And if I'm right, and that's the case, do you think it has to do with the crackdown on steroids throughout the both of the two federations, and the fact that these guys some of them are having trouble coming off the juice?
I think it's the exact opposite. We are having more injuries, and I think it's because they're not cracking down on steroids. And what happens is the guys who are getting hurt in almost every case are the guys, you know, with some exceptions. The injury to Barry Windham, which was a crushed wrist, that's not a steroid injury. A bone injury would not be a steroid injury, but a muscle tear, a tendon problem, I mean, those are classic steroid injuries, because what happens when you're taking steroids is that your muscle size overloads your tendon and ligaments, and it creates an imbalance, and something goes. And you know, I think we've had a plethora of them, and I think it's because the companies are not cracking down on steroids. They're still, you know, pretty well encouraging it.
Rick Rude's presence, debuts in the WCW like that. Now, did you notice, Dave, that Jody, I don't know if you caught the show, but Rick Rude came out and said a bad word, I think, for the television audience twice. Something that I wouldn't even mention. It was bad. Do you know the word I'm talking about, Dave? You heard?
Oh yeah, sure.
Now, what did you think of that?
Well, it's pay-per-view. I don't know. I mean, I've heard worse. I was more. I don't know. If there was anything that was in bad taste, I thought putting a pseudo electric chair in the ring and turning on an on button happened with Abdul the Butcher. I thought that was kind of in bad taste. And I do know that Request TV wrote WCW a letter, telling them that they didn't approve of some of the things that happened in the show. And hopefully, I understand that a lot of kids that were at the show, when they did the electric chair thing, were really it really had some negative effects. And I think that, I don't know where you draw the line, but somewhere there's got to be a line drawn.
Dave Meltzer of the Wrestling Observers on the line with us tonight, as is Rich Mancuso, our hometown wrestling expert. McMahon with you on the Fan. We'll turn our attentions next to the WWF, see where they're headed. Got a couple of pay-per-view show coming up, and pretty much up for grabs title reign of Hulk Hogan. We'll see what Dave thinks about the ongoings in the WWF in just a couple. Let Axel and the boys take us in the break, and then we're back talking wrestling with you on FAN.
Hey, fans, don't wait for news at 6 and 11 to find out what's happening. Get your sports from the Fan as it happens all day, every day. Sports Radio 66, WFAN, New York.
If you're like me and you love the good life, excitement, and VIP treatment.
20 after 3 on the Fan. Jody Mack, joined by Rich Mancuso and Dave Meltzer, talking wrestling tonight. Dave, in the WWF, they've got 2 pay-per-view cards, and the Royal Rumble is set for almost everything except the main event. The injury to Sid Justice has thrown everything into a bit of a tizzy in the WWF. What do you see coming out of the Royal Rumble, and how will that affect the other pay-per-view card that they've got scheduled?
Well, I'm not exactly sure what's going to happen on the second pay-per-view card, other than something's going to happen on the first one, which will, I guess, necessitate a second one. It's going to be interesting. It's the first time that they've had a Survivor Series where they've had they've pulled the star Hulk Hogan out of the 8-man tag and put him in an individual match, and I think that there's a reason for that. And the rest of the show, I guess they're going to have to put a replacement in there for Sid Justice and a replacement for Rick Steamboat. So they've got 2 spots to fill. I would assume Tito Santana will fill the spot for Steamboat.
Now, Dave, this whole situation now with Justice out, setting up Hogan Undertaker, of course, in the December 3rd, their other pay-per-view event. The Macho Man Randy Savage is going to be reinstated. We could see that happening. And we also, I got hold this week. I spoke to somebody who told me that the Ultimate Warrior may be pressed into action shortly again because of the injury to Justice. Now, if that be the case, how does this all set up?
I really don't know where they're headed, but I do think that it makes sense that the Ultimate Warrior would have a better bargaining position with Sid out for a while. Those 2, boy, it's going to be hard. I don't know. I guess they were going to bring them back anyway, but the way they do their business, if the Ultimate Warrior, Sid, Justice, and Randy Savage are all around at the same time, and Hulk Hogan's around, there's going to be 2 of those guys that are not in the main event. And it's going to be real interesting to see which 2 they are, because all of them seem to be were positioned at one point recently all as headliners.
With the fact that Hogan's movie did not do well at the box office, does that signify the fact that he's going to stay involved and stay as champion?
It could. I don't know. I mean, he still has 1 or 2 movies that he's already contracted for, and he's not dead in Hollywood. He's just not being looked at as as strongly as being as strong a box office star. I think that there were some people, based on the No Holds Barred, who thought that Hogan's name would be enough to be a big box office success, and now I think he's going to have some more chances, but the jury's more out, I guess. He didn't do himself any favors.
Does Ric Flair go into WrestleMania with the championship? What do you think?
I don't know what they're doing, but if I was in charge, yeah, I think that the best drawing one possible match that they would have would be Ric Flair's champion defending against Hulk Hogan, with Hulk Hogan saying that if he doesn't win the title, he retires. And I think that that's the match that would do more business than any other possible match they can have. Now, whether they're going to do that or whether they have a better idea, I don't know.
Now, to do that, do you think that Flair would take the title from Hogan? If they give it to the Undertaker, then you either got to have a short-time good guy champion and or have a bad guy match between Flair and the Undertaker, and I don't really see that happening.
Well, I don't see Flair and Undertaker at all. I don't think there's any chance of that. I mean, I guess there's two scenarios that you could look at that are possibilities. I mean, one is that Hogan would lose it to Flair. The other is that Hogan would lose to Undertaker, who would lose to a good guy who Flair could beat, which is an awful lot of title changes in a short period of time to do.
Right.
So, but those seem to be, if Flair is going to go in as champ, which I think is still, less than a 50-50 chance, but those would be the two ways it can happen.
If that were to happen, the second of your two scenarios, who do you think they'd push into services and have to give him a real quick push to a championship as that other good guy?
Well, Sid's out of the question. So I would say, of all the ones that got there, considering it would be Undertaker who would be the villain, they would have to beat Savage.
Savage, how about possibly Piper, because you've already got he and Flair in their little battles?
I would say no right now. I think there's reasons that I think everyone's kind of disappointed in the drawing power of Flair and Piper, and I think that that's one that they may not want to go with. Maybe as a super long shot Warrior, but he's been gone, and I think to throw him back in and make him champion right away, I don't see that happening. I think that if it goes that way, boy, it sure looks like Savage would be the best bet. I don't see it.
I agree. I think Savage, Dave, that would be the choice at this point. You saw the match last week in Los Angeles between Flair and Hogan, right?
Well, I saw the Oakland match. I didn't see the Los Angeles match.
Okay.
I saw the second. I guess it would be the second one.
Right. Well, two things. How was the crowd and how was the match?
Well, the crowd in Oakland was just a few hundred shy of a sellout, and it was a good match. It wasn't, we've all seen Flair in much better matches, but I enjoyed it. I thought it was, a pretty good match. In Los Angeles the next night, they had, about 12,400 paid, about 14,000 in the building, so it was a few thousand shy of a sellout. So it didn't go in there and do, the big, selling out a day in advance, all-time record business that some people thought maybe it would. At the same time, it's drawing a lot more fans than anything else in present-day wrestling is doing.
Were the matches themselves good? How did they decide them?
Well, the two in California both ended with Flair pinning Hogan by using a foreign object, and then they reversed it when they caught him with a foreign object, and Hogan won a disqualification. And, I heard they were both good matches.
Do you think the fans would rather see a Randy Savage-Jake Roberts confrontation or a Randy Savage-Ric Flair confrontation at this point?
At this point, I would say Jake Roberts, only because that's what's been built up on television. And the feud, the feud is so strong, because of what they did at the wedding thing, and also what will air, I think, on television the next week or two, where Jake pulls out the Cobra and fights Randy Savage in the arm and everything. So right now, I would say, people want to see Randy Savage get his hands on Jake Roberts.
And the thing they're doing with Hogan, just before Survivor Series, Hogan's reaching out to the Lord. He gets attacked, I believe, by the Undertaker and Jake.
Undertaker and Flair.
Undertaker and Flair, right.
Yeah.
And Hogan is going to reach out to the Lord. I understand he's going to be doing that quite often. Is that another risky move by the WWF, similar to what they did with Sergeant Slaughter and the Persian Gulf thing?
Well, I got to see how it plays on television. I don't know. Hogan's in a position where he can do no wrong in a lot of ways. So I don't know that it would be, but I don't know. I don't know. People are funny about religion. Sometimes they take things the wrong way, but I mean, we'll have to see how it's actually done. I've heard how it's done, and from what I've heard, I could see some people taking it, not so nicely, but it's hard to really say.
Dave, overall, with the WWF doing okay and the WCW having a decent pay-per-view card, not a great one, but a decent one, how would you say the state of affairs of wrestling is on both fronts?
Well, WWF is they're strong in their own way, but I don't think that they're super strong, and I think that they're in a position now, in fact, I know they are in a position now that between now and the end of the year, they're experimenting on several things. I think they're going to reevaluate a lot of things that they do as far as promoting house shows to determine, what they can do to most cost effectively to maximize profits, because they've been hit by the recession. It's no secret. They laid off some people, and there's a lot fewer wrestlers that are going on tour. Most of these shows are now 7-match shows. They, in the old days, they had 10-match shows. Sometimes they had 3 a night. Now that's really 2 crews. So, there's a lot of guys that aren't getting nearly as many dates. So I think that they're trying to do things, more cost efficiently. And WCW, they've been having, their problems, but, they've got one of the richest guys in the country bankrolling them, so, I don't know, maybe they can go on forever until someone says, hey, you better do something, and so far I haven't heard anyone, put down the hammer, so to speak, on them.
And he's got some extra money coming in from the Braves being in the World Series.
Yeah.
Dave, always a pleasure. If you could, please give out quickly the address where the fans can write to for your newsletter.
Okay, thanks. It's Wrestling Observer Newsletter, Post Office Box 1228, Campbell, California, 95009. $6 for 4 issues.
Always a pleasure, Dave. Thanks much.
Okay, thanks, Jody. I'll talk to you soon, Rich.
Thanks, Dave. Keep it in the ring.
All right, bye-bye.
Sports Radio 66, The Fan, WFAN.
Good morning, I'm John Stashauer with the latest 66 WFAN Sports News. Richmond Mobility, the #1 sports voice, state of New York.
Thanks, Dave. 3 late scores, 2 NBA, 1 3:36 here on FAN. Jody Mack with you. Rich Mancuso still on the lines with us. We've got your wrestling letters to get to, and also we'll be taking some wrestling phone calls at 718-937-6666. Special Friday night edition of the Wrestling Hour. Both of the next 2 weeks. Yours truly will have both of the next 2 Saturdays off. So wrestling fans, make a note of it. Rich will be with us Friday next week and Friday the week after.
That's the last of its son.